Hey there, coaches. Welcome back to another series of technical development. This is part two of the Grassroots coaching presentation. My name is Mike Feeney. I am the Executive Director of Operations for the East Cherokee Soccer Club. And today we're going through U6 and U6 Advanced Technical Development Concepts. We'll learn about how to inspire kids, how to educate them, and how to equip you as coaches to give the best possible outcome for those kids. Always remember at this grassroots phase, the kids always come first, right? This is not about us. We relived our glory days a long time ago. So, what can we do for those cute 4, 5, and early 6 year olds? And how do we get them to love the game of soccer? And more importantly, just have a really great time through learning, building teamwork, and enhancing their social skills. So, let's dive in to the introduction of technical development. So, overall focus here is to have fun, but build confidence and development of the players. So, how do we do that? Well, a couple different ways. Bring enthusiasm, bring some of those mom or dad jokes that we all love so much, but also through session design. And we'll talk about that a little bit later in the presentation. But how do we build and design sessions based off of the social, emotional, and technical aspects of our team and our players? How do we get them to love the game and love to learn? Obviously, the goal is that they want to keep coming back week after week after week. But let's face it, at U6, even U8, possibly even U10, half the kids on your team were signed up for their parents because they want to keep them off screens. They want them to play soccer instead of watching Bluey. They want them to enhance their social skills and to learn how to work as a team. It really doesn't matter whether it's football, soccer, baseball. A lot of times at 4, 5, and early 6 year olds, they're not really gravitating towards one sport or another. In fact, some of them don't even want to play, period. And, well, as much as I don't want to admit it, you will have those temper tantrums, and the parents will have to come on the field and they will have to take the player off, give them a juice box, some orange slices, and they're good to go again. So, as a coach, how do we continue to build skillful, confident, and creative players even if they're 4 and 5 years old? Let's dive into it. First, we have to understand the development stages of not only the person or the player, but also the game. So at U4, U5, what are they learning? How about U3? At 2 and 3 years old, can they play soccer? Absolutely. Our Little Lions program is a massive and it continues to grow season over season. What we've been able to do with Little Lions is to guide those players and give them a sense of fundamentals. They're introducing themselves to concepts that they didn't even know exist. Something simple as dribble with your head up while playing Simon Says. We have players in our U15 division, a lot of them that can't dribble with their head up. They were never taught. So you have a unique opportunity as a coach in these grassroots levels, these U6, U8, U10s that allow those players to really flourish. But let's get back to U6 and how, as a coach, we're able to identify what comes first, what comes next. We're always evolving our practices based on the kids, their emotional state. The weather could be a factor. The parents could be a factor. So, how as a coach do we get ourselves positioned to deal with the techniques before all the tactics? And the best way to do that is to understand the player development at certain ages. So at U6, we're still in that introduction phase, right? We're probably past the, okay, everybody, this is a soccer ball. This is a goal. But if we have some players that have never played before, which is probably most of your squad, where do we start? Well, the best way is to figure out and talk to your team. But what comes next? Do we start working on dribbling right away? Do we start working on passing? How about the offside trap? How about heading the ball? Yeah, probably not. But what are those core concepts or those technical skills that those kids really need to know starting at U6? Well, we're going to go through it. Core technical skills. Mastering Possession of the ball, allowing them to feel comfortable with the ball at their feet. This could be done by jumping and dancing with your ball. This could be done by Simon Says, red light, green light, sharks and minnows. You could take the kids shopping to different grocery stores. Not literally, but there's all kinds of different games that are also based on session plans that allow the technical development to occur even if the kids don't even realize they're learning. They're being exposed and they're starting to get proficient at some of these things. Passing and receiving. Emphasize passing and receiving with the inside of your foot. So how about shooting though? Is shooting important at U6? Well, it is. Are we teaching power over placement or placement over power? Are we teaching to strike with the laces or the toe? Even more so, are we teaching that we always need to strike with our toe or our laces? We don't. I would say probably 80% of the shots that the prolific goal scorers, Marta, Abby Wambach, Alex Morgan, Christian Pulisic, Ronaldo, Messi, you can go on and on. These prolific goal scorers are placing the ball into corners of the net. They're not just winding up and cracking it with their laces. That's kind of a misconception within the sport. But the other part is defending. There's two main moments in the game of soccer: attacking and defending. And at U6, we need to teach them the difference. And how do we do that? How do we keep them organized? So let's take a look first at mastering the ball, or as the slide says, ball mastery concepts in coaching. Encourage one-on-ones. Encourage small touches and creativity with the ball. Let them explore. The best thing as a coach that you could ever ask for is a player comes down the hill, walks onto your field, says, "Coach, guess what I learned today? Look at my new move." And they do some weird, funky thing with the ball that doesn't really move, and they jump over it and flip upside down, do some sort of cartwheel or something. And then they get up and they smile. That is awesome. The ability for you to encourage to continue to see that is so cool because not only are they engaged, they're really excited. Who cares if they can't actually do it yet? We have all season. Even if we get through the season, and now we go to U8, they still have all season. All of these things take so much time and effort and experience to master. They're not going to get it all in one day. But simple phrases like great control, keep it close. I love the creativity. Yes, keep your head up. Great idea. Way to stay calm. Those are all really great phrases that offer positive feedback that the kids are all automatically going to say, wow, I did something right. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to do that again and again and again and again. It's that constant repetition, right? And it's kind of, in some ways, it's like training a dog. If you're potty training a dog to go outside, every time they come back in, they get a treat. Well, they're going to want to keep going outside, going potty, so they can go back in and get a treat. Makes sense, right? Same with the kids. They're kind of like little puppies too. Once they see something positive, they're going to continue to crave your attention and they want to impress you. They want to make you happy. So the idea is the more we reward them with positive behaviors, the better and the more great habits they're going to be able to develop. Let's talk about passing and receiving. I know there's a lot of content on this slide, so we're going to keep this at a very high level. But keeping a shape on the field and opening to new areas is going to be critical. Allowing them to put their head up and look for that pass is really, really great. And also a very, very high level introduction to angles, timing, and vision. And you're probably thinking, okay, Mike, you're crazy if you think my 4-year-old is going to understand passing angles and passing lanes and being able to look up and find open space on the field. You'd be very surprised. If you explain this in a way that allows them to have a reference to something else, if you explain to them that the defender is an alligator and the defender's going to steal the ball away from you, the alligator wants to eat your ball for dinner, you have to find another person where this ball can go to. Otherwise, your alligator is going to eat it, and now you won't have a ball. Well, guess what? They're going to look at the defender and say, "Ooh, you're an alligator. I have to pass the ball." Immediately, their head comes up and they look for an option to pass. It's that simple. But of course, that's not going to be done in one session. That's going to take constant repetition over and over and over. Let's talk about shooting and finishing. So focus on the technique and not the power. I've heard from a lot of parents, over the years, my child has a rocket foot. They have a huge boot. They can kick the ball down the field. That's great, but I'm not all that interested. Because by booting the ball down the field, by having that gigantic shot, by having all these things tells me they might not be playing the game in the best capacity. As a defender, we don't want to be booting the ball down the field. And I use the word booting in air quotes. We want to maintain possession. We want to find an outlet pass. Once the defender gets contact of that ball, now comes a transition. And we want to start possessing that ball and work the offense down the field. We don't want to just boot it back from where it came from because guess what? Now we got to start all over again. The other part here is small goals equal accuracy and control. And a lot of times that's why we play on smaller goals at the U4 and U6 age groups, because it allows them to work on the placement and it makes sure that they have controlled contact over the ball. But with shooting and finishing, we also want them to make decisions and be creative. If they're standing on top of the penalty area, probably 4, 5, 6 yards out from goal on a smaller modified field, we want them to be empowered to take that shot. Even if it rolls and it stops 2 feet in front of the goal line, the opportunity is there for them to do that again. And maybe next time they kick it just a little bit harder, put a little bit more effort into it, and it becomes a goal. We always want to reward those positions. Let's talk about the mechanics of shooting. This obviously is a much older player, but the same mechanics still kind of apply. We want to teach a plant foot. We want the center of the body over the top of the ball. The head in the ball should be very close, and your center of gravity should be dead set over the center of the ball. So if we drew a stick, kind of like this diagram over here, if we drew a stick up through the center of the ball, this should kind of be right down the middle of the player's upper torso. The ankles should be locked and the leg should be curved. All of the weight and all of the momentum should be on the plant foot until you make contact with the ball. Once the kicking foot makes contact with the ball in the middle or the top of the ball, that player should then transfer all of that momentum on top of their shooting foot and land on the shooting foot. I know there was a lot of information there. But the general idea is proper shooting mechanics. Again, we have to get the techniques over the tactics, especially at the U6 age group. Now let's talk about defending. This is where I think U6 and U6 Advanced really kind of separates itself, is the ability for people and players to recognize the opportunity to defend and when to defend and how to defend. Again, we talk about how to attack, when to attack. Are we challenging versus containing? And once again, our angles, timing, and vision come back into play, just like it did during passing. So the idea for U6 is, and if they don't learn anything on the defensive side other than when to challenge and when to contain. If the player that is possessing the ball or attacking on your defending side, so if they're attacking down on your half, they're going down the sideline. That player is really not a threat at that point. Now, once he or she starts cutting to the middle or looking for a centering pass, now it becomes more of a threat to the defense. So why not teach the kids to contain? Allow the possessing attacker to make a mistake. It could be a heavy touch. It could be a touch out of the touch line, and it could be a throw in. Allow those kids to think through those types of things. Yes, they're small, but little things like interrupting a quick practice, a quick scrimmage. Say, hey, Charlie, what happens if you swing and you miss the ball? Uh-oh. Well, then our attacker is going to go all the way to the goal because you were the last one, right? Uh-oh, that wasn't a very good alligator. But what happens if the alligator just kind of waited and you became a shadow and you didn't let that player leave And all of a sudden, now the player makes a mistake and the alligator gets the ball. Different ways to phrase things the kids are going to be able to comprehend. All right, 2 defensive positions, surfboard and the challenging option. The challenging option is going to be something that the player automatically sees an opportunity to dive in and steal the ball, often leading to transitions. Surfboard is more of that contained approach. One foot in front of the other, your heels are off the ground and you're balancing on your toes, and you're allowing the player to give a little bit of space, waiting for that mistake or that touch. Once that player makes the mistake, you can instantly turn over and transition the opposite direction. Again, teaching your kids what way is appropriate in certain circumstances is a huge win at U6. Let's talk about transitional moments. We're going to keep this at a very high level for U6. This is more for U6 Advanced. So in soccer, there's 4 moments that US soccer normally recognizes. It's attacking, transition to defending, defending, transition to attacking, and you guessed it, attacking. For this sake, we're going to talk about attacking and defending. We're not really going to work on the transition to attacking and defending. The idea here is that if you're attacking and you lose the ball, well, all of a sudden now your focus shifts to defending. If you're defending and you win the ball, now your focus shifts to attacking. It's a very easy concept for the kids to grasp, especially if you put it in a way that says, okay, this is your house. Nobody scores on our house. We're going to defend our house. As soon as the other team gets the ball, we need to click into, red alert, we need to go into defense. Remember, nobody comes near our house. Nobody shoots on our house. Their mindset automatically shifts from scoring a goal to, oh, this is exciting, to, red flag. Now we need to play defense. Everybody out. If you start teaching your transitional moments in the game, what you're going to see is there's going to be an effort to reorganize and recover quickly, but you're also going to see that these can become equally thrilling. And if the defenders regain possession, the immediate goal is to look forward and assess how quick they can launch that counterattack. If there's a player standing up there open, let's recognize that pass. Let's get the ball to them and see if we can catch the defense off guard. So let's talk about transitional moments. And I'm not really going to go into a whole lot of detail here. We talked about the high level concepts, but you can see just off the timeline how this kind of progressed. The first image in the top left corner, yellow is possessing the ball. By the time we get to the transition to defending, the purple player, the defender, has automatically decided, oh, I'm going to step up and I'm going to challenge and win this ball. And she did. So now all of a sudden, purple transitions to attacking and yellow transitions to defending. These photos were taken in a frame of less than 2 seconds. So how do we teach transitional play? And how do we teach 4 and 5-year-olds how to work within a small area? After all, the U6 field is really small, and whether we have 4 or 5 players aside, there's not a whole lot of room to work. So what's the best way that we can get those players to dive into and I guess engineer some ingenuity, into this? How do we get creative? Well, small-sided games, 2v2s, 3v3s. If you have a team of 8, let's do 2 games of 2v2. All 8 players are physically engaged in the game, use small goals in a small size field. So the first set of two teams will play, and then one team on each field will switch, and then you're playing another team, and then you'll switch again, and make it a round robin tournament. Make it fun and exciting. You could even put a spin on there where you put a theme and say, okay, everybody's got to name their team after somebody from Lilo and Stitch, and this is Team Stitchy, and this is Team whoever. It could be Moana. It could be any Disney characters. It could be robots. It could be food. You could have Team Macaroni and Cheese. Something to continue to engage their interest, but also make it a friendly competition within a training and practice environment. The other thing here is let the kids play. There's no reason to keep stopping every 10 or 15 seconds saying, oh, nope, let's try this. Let's do this. Okay, everybody, we got this wrong. Let's try and correct this. Let's do this. Let's do that. Allow them to make mistakes. They're going to learn from their own mistakes, but continue to use positive, encouraging phrases to show the players that it's okay that they've made some decisions and made mistakes. That's really important for the development and the positive reinforcement of the players. So once we get to the first 2 or 3 practices in, now we start talking about formations. What are some formations that we can use? Well, why would we pick a formation? And what are we supposed to do? Understanding formations is critical, not just in soccer, but it's for tactical reasons. But it also teaches young players the fundamentals of the game. It teaches and provides structure, helping players know where they should be on the field and how to support their teammates and also each other effectively. At the grassroots level, we try and aim to keep some of these formations simple but very flexible. The focus is helping them grasp the young players of the basic concepts like the spacing, the roles and responsibilities of each position, and some teamwork. It's very important that as a U6 coach, you encourage all of these players to rotate through different positions. You might have 1 or 2 players that really prefer playing defense, 1 or 2 that prefer playing midfield, and that's okay. But every once in a while, let's challenge them, even if they don't like it, even if the parents don't like it. It's kind of the building block of soccer intelligence. If you break down the different roles from within the formations, the kids are going to understand all of the concepts of the game, not just the one that he or she likes to play the best. Everybody wants to score goals. Everybody wants to be Lionel Messi. That's great. But Lionel Messi does understand every position on the field, not just because he's played it, but because he's now so far advanced and he understands the game at such a high level that we can't be like Messi yet, right? The kids don't understand the technical aspects of the game. All they're working on right now is their techniques and getting exposure to what some of those roles and responsibilities may look like. Let's look at the common 1-2-1 formation. It has 1 defender in the back, 2 midfielders, 1 on the right, 1 on the left, and a striker up top. It's a square or a diamond formation. You could also line this up as a 2v2, or excuse me, a 2-2. It has a balanced but simple approach, and it also teaches using the width of the field. It builds supporting play, and it transitions easily into offensive attacks or defensive shells. So the idea here is that the striker is kind of, in some ways, that goal scorer for the game. The midfielder on the left and the right side are going to be transitional players. They're going to be key into either supporting or reducing offensive attacks or counterattacks and defensive attacks. If we look at common formations of 7 aside, we'll see something, for example, like a 2-3-1. It is a very similar concept to what we have here in kind of the building block from a 1-2-1. It still emphasizes a lot of movement within the midfield while only having 1 attacker and only 2 defenders in the back. So a 1-2-1 formation is really important for the U6 age group because it allows you at that point, a couple seasons later to build and get into a different formation. But how do we teach formations? Well, we need to walk players through the positions on the field describing what each position actually does. Rotate the roles, every few games or even in the game. Ask probing questions to assess the player's comfort in that assigned position. If they're not comfortable, that's an opportunity as a coach. Let's see if we might be able to make them comfortable. Set a goal. If an offensive minded person wants to play offense all the time, hey, I got an idea. What's going to make you a great attacker is going to be a good defender. If you understand and you can see things from defense, next time you're playing on an attacking line or as a striker or as a number 9, now you're able to actually understand what a defenseman is looking for and different ways that they're taught. Now it's going to make you even better and more experienced the next time you decide to take a player on one, or you try and dribble down the field and kind of get stuck. There's some options here. The other thing is you want to generate situations where it requires all positions to react. When we're moving as a unit, that is not bumblebee soccer. We see that a lot in under six, and certainly in under eight and sometimes in under 11 as well. The idea of staying in formation is to continue to encourage a shape. When the ball is in the attacking end, of course, if we're playing a 1-2-1 formation where you have one defender, two midfielders, and an attacker, there is absolutely no reason why the attacker should be playing defense and the defense should be playing as an attacker. Of course, there's times where they can overlap and communicate. However, we need to keep preaching, keep your diagonal shape. It's going to be extremely important going forward as an offensive or defensive unit to maintain shape. So if we look at what we have here as a general overview of a photo, okay, the U6 game in this capacity was played four-a-side, of course, co-ed. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4 players for blue, 1, 2, 3, 4 players for yellow. Now, the ball, it's kind of tough to see, but the ball is between player number 3 and player number 4 for yellow, about to go out the sideline for a throw in, the touchline. So, why in the world do we have this gigantic field and all 8 players playing the game are within 10 feet of the ball? So, if we are teaching properly and we are using the diamond formation and we're allowing the players to see things and experiment through the field of play, we won't see this. We will never see the bunch ball, the bumblebees. There's all kinds of different names for it. Keep your team in a formation, even if they continue to lose games and it doesn't look effective. It's more important to teach the foundation and the technique and the fundamentals of this game than it is to win games at this point. Because guess what? Eventually, they're not going to start losing games anymore. They're going to start winning games, and they're going to start winning even more. And they're going to start scoring goals, defending goals, and it's going to become very frustrating for the opposing team. All right, let's talk about planning some sessions. Again, a lot of stuff here, but the general idea is we're going to set a topic and a theme. What are we going to work on today? Is it going to be passing? Is it going to be dribbling, defending? You could get ambitious towards the end of the season and talk about transitional play if you want. But the idea of U6 is kind of the main four concepts, the dribbling, passing, and defending. So let's talk about how we get that started. How do these session plans actually get kicked off? Well, we're going to start with a small-sided game that resembles something real. It could be something inside, a small penalty area for one of the bigger fields. It could be a small coned-off square. It could be 3v3s, 4v4s. It could be 2v2s. It could be 4v2s. Any small-sided or overload situation would be great. Then we're going to get into a game-like scenario. We're then going to take that game-like scenario and build upon it and break it down and kind of alter it in different ways where we're starting to approach the whole learning concept and learning phase of practice. Then we're going to take everything that we've kind of learned within game-like scenario 1 and game-like scenario 2 and put it together to encourage players to apply what they've learned, have fun, and be realistic in our final gameplay. Towards the end of practice, we want to sit our players down and say, first of all, most importantly, did everybody have fun? And you're going to hear the yes or no's. Is anybody bored? And you might get the yes, I'm bored, yes, I'm bored. But that is reflection for you as a coach to say, okay, wait a minute. What are we doing next week? Because if half the kids aren't having fun, half the kids are bored, that means we need to change something up. It might mean more bad jokes. It might mean some music. It might mean you dress up in a costume. Remember, whatever we have to do to keep the kids engaged and have fun, that is our role as a coach. We're supposed to be people that inspire, and we're allowing the kids to explore something new and different. And we're there for the support, but we're also there to be your cheerleader and a mentor. All right, a couple different things that we can do. 4 goals. 4 goals is really fun. This essentially is a 1v1v1v1. There are 10 to 12 soccer balls, give or take, placed in the middle. On the whistle, the player runs into the center to retrieve the balls and score in their own net. After scoring, they go back and get another ball. If the player misses the net, they must go retrieve it and score before going back to get another ball. So essentially, This is like Hungry Hippos. It's really kind of the way that this ends up being, except this is played in a really, really small area. This could be a 20 by 20 foot square with with 4 goals. This is really fun to watch, and the kids absolutely love it. Another option we have is soccer dancing. This is my very favorite. The idea here is we have a very small cone section. It could be 15 feet by 15 feet. It could be 20 by 20, 25 by 25. You're the coach. You decide what's best for your players. You bring some upbeat music, some kids bop, some Taylor Swift, some K-pop Demon Hunters, whatever you decide, and allow the music to play. The kids then feel the rhythm to the music. They kind of get inspired by the beat. Once they've kind of gotten the beat after a few seconds, then we start doing some ball skills and they start dancing with the balls. It is really fun to watch, and it is an absolute blast as a coach because you can be out there and they're dribbling around you. They're doing some toe touches, they're doing some pendulums, they're doing pullbacks, all kinds of different things, but they're dancing and they're having a great time. That's the most important part, right? So through this, they're going to learn coordination, syncing body movements and parts, rhythm, and of course, touches on the ball. And then we get into alligator run. So you'll have an alligator, the one in the middle, and then you're going to have 4, 5, 6 swimmers, whatever you decide, however this works out for your team. You're going to wait and see, where the alligator or crocodile is actually going to go to try and steal the ball. The more balls that the alligator or crocodile steals, the less players that are going to be able to finish the drill, which is great. So this teaches one-on-one defending. It teaches the idea that there's change in speed and direction, and it also allows the players to have a really good time trying to keep the ball away from the alligator and make it to the other side of the field. And then, we got a typo. These are both alligator run. Nope. This is supposed to be Wheel of Fortune. So the idea is, when you have some of these drills, you can do variations. So this is very similar to the drill where they were actually dancing, except, keep the music going, and it's essentially musical chairs. On the whistle, the players sprint to get the balls, but because there's, one less soccer ball each round, one player will be out or without a ball. The player without a ball is then removed from the game. You'll continue on until you only have one ball and it becomes a one-on-one. But again, use the music and enjoy, the fun and the laughing, because you're coaching, the kids are having fun, but they're also learning a ton of fundamentals and techniques and technical skills. And another one of my favorites is crossfire. So here we get excited because now we can take all of these different balls here, on the outsides, so the blue pegs have the ball. And then the idea is that the black pegs have to run through it without getting hit. What this teaches is speed and accuracy and the ability for players to make a run off the ball. This is also a lot of fun. If the player gets hit, well, they sit down and essentially now they're frozen. It's kind of like freeze tag in some ways too. So things to keep in mind when doing your session plans. Always focus on fun and engagement. That's why the kids are here. They want to have fun. They want to be engaged. Even if their parents signed them up and this is their first season, you quite literally, as the coach, are the difference whether they're going to go to another sport, whether they're going to stay here, or whether they're not going to play any sports at all. So the more effort that you put in and the better you do as a coach, the more retention the club has for the players and the better experience that they're going to be able to see as they progress into the sport. Try and follow the play, practice, play model. That was something that was done in part 1 of the Grassroots series, but essentially you're starting out with a warm up, then you're getting into the game like 1, game like 2, and finishing with a game realistic scenario with a reflection. Keep your activities age appropriate. Progress in skills gradually. Ensure high touches and participation in all practice sessions. Do not do the line where everybody lines up and takes a random shot at the goal after the next person. Encourage positive coaching and always plan for safety. Try and avoid over-structuring and over-drilling. No kid wants to sit there and just drill all practice long. Don't overload sessions with instructions. They don't want to hear you talking. They want to go and play soccer. Avoid early specialization. Positions really are starting to be assigned at U10. So in U6, U6 Advanced, these are certainly not times where they're assigned positions unless the kid is absolutely 100% certain that they want to be a defender. Do not ignore the aspect of fun. Don't neglect individual attention and trying to keep things easy. Don't use too many balls or complicated equipment because then it just gets very confusing. Evaluating your players. So, observe consistency in some core skills. Evaluate the game understanding and your decision making. And always monitor their attitude, effort, and enjoyment. This is critical at the beginning of every practice and also at the end. Talk to the players. How are they doing in school? How are they doing at home? Do they love playing soccer? Are they bored? We kind of talked about that. Celebrate the effort, the sportsmanship, and their love for the game. These are the true mile markers of grassroots coaching. So, ECSC coaching, we're definitely a player first, ball at the feet philosophy. We want players to succeed, but we also want to be player centric. We want to create a holistic system with autonomous support from the coaches, meaning that we want them to make all of their decisions. We want them to have a great environment that is open arms, but we also want to be there for support and guide them when they need some help. We want to create skillful, creative, and confident players, but more than that, we want them to love the game, respect the game, and help the game grow. The more people playing soccer on your team means the more people playing soccer at ECSC. That means more people playing soccer in Cherokee County. That now means more people playing soccer in the state of Georgia, United States, and throughout the world. But always remember, you are ECSC. And the best advice that I can give to you is what you put into this club, you will absolutely get out of it. It is an amazing program. We're really excited to have you. And anytime you need anything, please don't hesitate to call or email the club, find us on the fields. And, essentially, we're giving you free reign. This is your team. You make the decisions. You know what's best for your players. But if you ever need support and resources, let us know. We're always here to help. With that, welcome to the family. We'll see you soon.